At the start of my second week working at Merrill Lynch, my boss sent me an ominous message. We need to talk. ASAP. My job was supposed to start in the fall after I graduated, but since we were in the middle of lockdown, I peppered my manager asking to start early. And eventually, she said yes, but my team wasn't ready, so they put me on a temporary team to process loans. I joined the meeting with my temporary boss and he wasted no time. Red-faced, he accused me of fraud. Because I wasn't just the fastest person on my team, I was processing more loans than anyone in the entire organization. Now luckily, I wasn't cheating, I was just using a strategy that I had developed without my knowing since I was a kid. I had been doing it instinctually and I wasn't made aware of it until I found this book. Now this is written by a 5th grade teacher who just wanted to help creative people get more out of their life. And unbeknownst to him, the insights in that book not only helped me work faster than anyone could imagine, but also became the backbone of my eventual overemployment. Matt has no idea, but he basically wrote the Overemployed Bible. And within it, there are 4 main commandments. The first of which being... Now back to that meeting, I explained what I did to my boss. My job was to look through loan documents and figure out if it was legit or fake. And each team member was measured by the number of loans that they processed per week. The counter started on Monday morning and ended at 4 p.m. on Friday. And my first week, I processed a total of 10 loans, which was the second lowest on the team. But what people didn't realize when they were scoffing at the performance was what I was actually doing. I love this parable. There are 2 brothers who are both tasked to chop down giant trees. The first gets straight to work, hacking away as hard as he can at that trunk. And an hour later, he's made decent progress, but he looks over and the second brother hasn't even started yet. And you know where this goes. Abraham Lincoln classically said, if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I will spend the first 5 sharpening my saw. And that's exactly what I was doing. First thing I always do is to create a checklist. If I notice that there is a repetitive task that I will be doing over and over again, I want to get it down in writing, step by step, as soon as possible. That way I can unload the cognitive burden of remembering all the steps that go into that process. But here's what most people miss. The checklist isn't the hack. It's what I do with that list that then gives me that 10x speed boost. Now I create this list initially by finding out who the top performer is. I locate them and then I ask them to have a meeting and screen share and show me step by step down to the minute details of what they do. Growing up under the shadow of a genius twin gave me a superpower that I became comfortable being perceived as dumb. See, there is such thing as a stupid question, but not in the beginning. This is where you can ask everything, clear up all of the problems you have, and make sure that you're building a strong foundation. It's similar to math. Most people struggle with math because their foundation is not solid. But if they went back and fixed their algebra, their multiplication, then you can progress much more easily. So I create that list based on the top performer, and then I go through and perform the task myself and notice what is different between what they were doing and what I would do. And then, this is where it gets a little insane, but I go through step by step with a stopwatch and try to identify where's the friction, what is slowing me down, and how can I make each one of these steps marginally faster. For instance, things like having to wait for loading, having to switch tabs, having to scroll the screen or do an extra click. All of these little minute things that most people don't care about, save you maybe a second here or a second there, can end up adding up in aggregate to be minutes. And when you compound those minutes saved over days and weeks and months, that's where you get the outperformance. So for instance, the little tweaks that I had, I would download all of the files that I would process over the course of a day, so I didn't have to wait the 3 to 5 seconds each time for the files to download. And then I would zoom out to 200% to make sure that I didn't have to scroll down the document to locate each little piece. And then I would use keyboard shortcuts to navigate without using the mouse and use a second monitor. Each one of these tweaks seems minor and is overlooked by almost every single person. And this brings me to Matt's obsession that was exactly in line with mine. The second commandment, don't torch minutes. See, it's standard practice for us to accept the killing of minutes. Generally, we don't value them. For instance, if we have 10 minutes between meetings, we will try to find the most efficient way to squash that time and get to the next meeting. And there's this great quote that I've said before by Stephen Benet that life is not lost by dying, it's lost minute by minute. And Matthew Dix is not just a teacher, he's also a world-class storyteller, having won the Moth Grand Slam 9 times, a business owner, and an author of 9 books. 6 books, actually. Just had 69 on the brain. One of those books being my favorite of all time, which is right there. And he can do all of these things for the sole reason that he values minutes. And like me, when he was younger, he started to build the muscle of efficiency. I have never met anyone else that also used a stopwatch while doing dishes to find the most optimal way to get it done. Efficiency is a muscle, and most of us have let it atrophy. It takes practice to notice these friction points and want to iron them out. But once you've done it enough, even outside of work, it becomes glaringly obvious when something is inefficient and how you can speed it up very easily. And the second week of my job, I took my output from 10 loans processed to over 200, which was double the top performer on our team. And that's when my boss scheduled that meeting. And basically, I walked him through exactly what I was doing, and I could see the light bulb go off in his head. He started to call it genius. No, I'm just the brother who learned how to sharpen the saw. But after that meeting was over, he scheduled another one with the directors. This is where I got a little bit nervous because of the next commandment. Towards the beginning of the book, Matt wrote this. Here's the truth. Rule followers have taller, steeper hills to climb and more gatekeepers to get past. People endeavoring to live a more productive life can't always afford to battle these additional challenges, so rules must be broken so that they can succeed. Now, this sounds like horrible advice, but he's not saying go cheat on your taxes or rob a bank, but rather recognizing what rules are actually just social conventions or which ones you can bend without breaking them. We need to keep our nose to the grindstone looking for loopholes that can save us time and energy. For instance, the author tells another great story about one of his fellow colleagues at school. See, he dresses kind of schleppy. T-shirt and jeans, and one of his friends knocked on his door and came into his classroom. He was kind of worried and asked Matt if he could start dressing a little bit better. Dress for success, he said. He wanted him to impress the new administration that just came to the school. And Matt's response is tremendous. I want to be a teacher, there's no further advancement necessary. Meaning, he's already achieved this success and dressing better actually doesn't matter. And one of the rules that I broke was reading the entire loan document. See, in our handbook, it said that we had to read the entire thing, but I was skeptical. So I went into our database of all the fraudulent loans and started to compare them. And I noticed that there were 3 or 4 sections that showed up over and over and over again. So skip the rest. 80-20. Only identify those sections that are the highest likelihood of being able to predict if a loan is fraudulent, and then skip the rest. Here's mine and Matt's framework for strategic rule breaking. The first is to do a consequence audit. Matt lays out that most of the time we avoid rule breaking so we don't get in trouble. But what actually is that trouble? Is it your boss raising your voice at you? Most of the time, the trouble is not that bad at all. I love the phrase ask for forgiveness, not permission. Take my overemployment, for example. Whenever people hear about it, they tense up and immediately say, isn't that illegal? You can't work multiple jobs, you'll go to jail. The IRS will catch you. How do you know that? Have you checked, or do you just assume that? Because if you look into it, it's not illegal. And the worst thing that could happen is to lose your job. Okay, I have another one. But what if you lose both? Okay, then I'll get a new one. For me, making life-changing money was completely worth the chance of losing both of my jobs. And a great decision-making framework that Matt lays out in the book is your 100-year-old self. Meaning that most of the stressors in our life do not matter at all. And an easy way to identify that is by asking ourselves when we feel ourselves crashing out, will my 100-year-old self care about this? And you don't even need to go that far. Will this matter in a month, in a year, even in an hour? Most of the times, probably not. With this attitude, all the people screaming, the delays, you can let it go. It doesn't matter. And in this meeting with the directors, I was extremely nervous that they would chastise me for breaking rules. But quite the contrary. Actually, they agreed that most of the document didn't need to be read, so instead, they updated the handbook. See, ask not for permission, ask for forgiveness. And some other examples of rules that I break at work pretty frequently is skipping pointless meetings, not doing required trainings, and questioning every urgent deadline. And unsurprisingly, none of those things would get me fired. And quite the opposite. Actually, all of those combined freed up enough time for me to work 3 jobs at the same time. Without it, I would have been stuck with one. But to actually pull off working multiple jobs at the same time, I needed another one of Matt's commandments. And here's where Matt actually wrote the Overemployed playbook. So he explained his strategy of how he runs his classroom, and his basic tenet is, if I'm not needed to do the task, then someone else should do it, meaning that his entire classroom is run by the students. For instance, taking attendance, student job, filing papers, student job, managing the library, student job. If a 5th grader can do it, then Matt won't do it. And this sounds lazy until you realize what it actually creates. It gives you time to do the thing that produces the most value. And for Matt, that's actually teaching. And I applied this same logic at work. Whenever a new piece of work would come in, I would always ask myself, am I the right person to be doing this? And if the answer was no, which it almost always was, then either I would delegate it to someone that can probably do it better, or I would just say, no, my plate is full. Now, most people think that delegating makes them expendable and will get them fired, but I propose that it's actually quite the opposite. My bosses at all 3 jobs thought that I was a top performer because I was only focusing on my core competencies. I wasn't staying busy just to be seen as someone who was producing. I was actually producing the value. But delegating at work was actually the easy part. The hard part was unlearning a belief that was planted in me by my mom when I was 12. I'm in 7th grade over at a friend's house after school. My friend's house was on the top of the hill. You know what that means. Me and my friends used to joke that he didn't have 1 front door, he had 2. And when my mom eventually came to pick us up, the first question that she asked was, whose car is that? I look over and I see a van in the driveway. It's my friend's house cleaner. And my mom shook her head and said, God, what a waste. Why can't they clean it themselves? And in that moment, a belief was planted in me that took over a decade to remove, that outsourcing is lazy. But here's where that falls apart. Would you call it lazy to pay someone to make your clothes or fix your car? No. So then, why is it lazy to have someone clean your house? So usually the same people who call it lazy to hire a cleaner will spend the same 3 hours cleaning the house themselves, and then complain that they don't have time for that business or that other thing that they wanted to start. Now again, I understand that it's expensive, but you know what else is? Our minutes. And if we could use those minutes to produce more value than what we are paying the person to do the task, then we should always be outsourcing. So consider if you could gain from one of these things. Now initially, I was horrified and against these ideas, but slowly but surely I started to outsource my day-to-day life. And by the end, I was saving myself 25 hours a month. Was it expensive? Yes. But this was the key reason why I was able to work 3 jobs. But here's what Matthew Dix really understood that most people, like me, miss. The goal is not to optimize our life into oblivion. It's to optimize the boring things so ruthlessly that you can create space for what actually matters. See, and the commandments in this book are not just about becoming an efficiency robot. They're about recognizing that most of what we stress over is theater, and we actually have much more time than we think if we start to scrutinize the details. And the irony is actually kind of beautiful. A 5th grade teacher who wanted to help me live a more creatively fulfilling life accidentally taught me how to extract maximum value out of corporate America while giving it minimal effort. And he has no idea, but I think he would approve. Thanks for watching.